Thank you for coming to my speech, my living history speech. This is on the assassination of President Kennedy, and this is my audience. For this speech, I had to interview somebody that lived during the time of a major historical event in America. So I chose to interview my mother about the assassination of President Kennedy. She was 14 years old when it happened. She was in the 9th grade. It occurred November the 22nd, 1963. That was a Friday. President Kennedy was in Dallas at the time. He was in Texas to raise the Democratic morale. The Democratic Party was suffering at the time. On Thursday, he stayed the night in Fort Worth. He got up on Friday morning about 8:45, left the hotel, immediately gave a speech in the parking lot. He then flew 8 minutes to, he first had a Chamber of Commerce breakfast. He then flew about 8 minutes to Dallas, landed at Love Field Airport. He greeted fans for about 10 minutes, shook hands, got into a Lincoln convertible, proceeded in a motorcade, and was supposed to be about a 10-mile ride through downtown Dallas. The car was going about 25 miles an hour. As they came to the 3 Street overpass, he was shot right from the in front of the book depository. There is some confusion on how many shots were actually fired. Autopsy reports say that he was hit twice, once in the brain, which ultimately killed him, and once in the throat, right above the Adam's apple. He was immediately taken to the hospital, where he was in operating room number 1 for about 30 minutes, and he was pronounced dead. They believe that he was killed instantly. At the hospital, they made several attempts to try to save his life and bring him back, but ultimately they believe he was killed instantly. He was placed in a bronze coffin and taken from the hospital back to the airport, placed on Air Force One, and there with Mrs. Kennedy by the side of Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson, the vice president at the time, was sworn into office to be our 36th president. When interviewing Mom about the situation and what she remembered, what she felt, I really felt sad. I felt like I was there when it occurred. I could feel her emotions. She was in the 9th grade, and in gym class, it came over the loudspeaker that President Kennedy had been shot. They were asked to go to their last class of the day. They put their heads on their desk, and over the loudspeaker, the radio was played, and it was announced that President Kennedy had been shot and killed. According to Mom, everyone was sad, everyone was crying, teachers, students. It was a major shock for America. On the way home on the bus, students could see adults driving down the road with their lights on. And for this day and age, that's normal. Our cars now come automatic with lights running automatically during the day and night. In that time, it was a sign of respect to run your lights during the day. And almost every car had their lights running to show their condolences, their respect, their sadness, which it's very different from today. Our president is not as well respected as it was in the 1960s. Also, people were pulling their cars over on the side of the road, getting out, crying, hugging each other, talking to each other. Again, just a sign of the shock, the sadness, and the respect that they had for the president. Today I have with me one of my visual aids. It's a poster board. On this side, it's facts about the assassination of President Kennedy. For one, Mrs. Kennedy rarely traveled with the president. This was one of her first trips with him. She was running late that day. She was not with him as he gave the speech in the parking lot, but she did arrive late to the Chamber of Commerce breakfast. She wore a rose-colored suit that day, and she kept that suit on the whole day, even after he was shot. It was spattered with his blood, and she had that on. One of the major pictures that I will show you in a minute, she had that suit on while President Johnson was sworn in on Air Force One. One sad fact, Mrs. Kennedy, after they announced President Kennedy had passed away, she took her wedding ring off after he was in the coffin and placed it on his finger in the coffin and gave him a kiss goodbye. Today there are several conspiracy theories about, who shot the president. Was it an act with Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby? As most of you probably know, Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald, and people think that that was a cover-up because Jack Ruby ran strip clubs and dance clubs, and they thought it was a drug situation, and they think that Ruby killed Oswald, so nothing major more would come out about him. Over here I have a timeline about the events of that day, from the leaving the hotel to the breakfast to 8-minute flight to Dallas. President Kennedy entered the convertible, proceeded in the motorcade. It was a 10-mile route. About 1:30 Eastern Standard Time, President Kennedy was shot. He arrived at Parkland Memorial Hospital moments later. He was in operating room number 1 just under 30 minutes. A Catholic minister read President Kennedy his last rites, and at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, President Kennedy was pronounced dead. Lyndon B. Johnson, who was vice president at the time, stayed in the hospital for about 30 more minutes until he was taken to Air Force One and sworn in as president. This is a map of the location and the route that they were traveling. Also, I have a PowerPoint here of a few pictures from the assassination. Excuse me. This was when they arrived in Dallas at Love Field Airport. This was the cover of Time magazine, the moment that changed America. Riding in the motorcade. Right immediately after President Kennedy was shot. Newspaper, The Washington Reporter. Another newspaper front page. This is a shot of Lyndon B. Johnson being sworn in as president on Air Force One with Mrs. Kennedy beside of him. That is Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby shooting him. This is the funeral procession on Monday for President Kennedy after he was shot. That is his son at watching the funeral procession go by. And then Mrs. Kennedy and their 2 children. The cover of Life magazine. And the eternal flame that burns at Arlington National Cemetery for President Kennedy. One thing that we were asked to explain was what this event has on America today, the effect it has on America today. 2 things stand out. One, Lyndon B. Johnson was the first president to sign into office the civil rights movement, civil rights laws, legislation. So had President Kennedy not been killed, who knows where we would be today with that. Would President Kennedy have signed into legislation, civil rights laws? We don't know. Also, gun control law. That is a major political discussion topic today. And after the assassination of President Kennedy, it became more into the spotlight. What do we need to do about gun control? So that was my speech, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.